First story, flying binoculars. This experience happened in Minnesota in the late 1990s. I need to mention that in 1994, when I was 13, my spinal cord was injured. This injury left me quadriplegic and ventilator dependent, which explains things in each of the stories. One evening, I was in the kitchen by myself for a few minutes watching some TV when I heard a loud thunk behind me and to the right. My mom was in the garage, probably about 15 feet away from the kitchen, well within earshot. She would go into the garage a lot to take phone calls. When she came in from one phone call, I told her, "Ma, I heard a noise. Look behind me." She gasped and said, "How the hell did that happen?" "What?" I asked her. "The binoculars are on the floor on the right side of your back right tire." Talking about my power wheelchair. Now, the binoculars had always been on top of the bread maker on the kitchen counter to my left. Even if they would have slid off of the bread maker, which there's no way they could have, they would have landed on the kitchen counter in front of the bread maker. To be on the floor where they would have had to travel through the air, about 10 feet. I didn't see any movement out of my left peripheral vision, and I would have. I'm sure everybody knows that binoculars are heavy. Whatever or whoever moved them across the room had some physical yet invisible strength. That was the only time that happened. Second story, picture. Our house is a split level. We were fortunate enough to have an addition put on 11 years after I was injured, so we have much more room. And at this time, my bedroom was what used to be the dining room. On the wall to the left of my bed was a picture of a cousin, Brian, that passed away when he was a young boy of only 7. One morning, probably around 11 a.m., I was in that room at my desk and computer, probably doing some homework. I saw, to my right, some movement. I saw that picture lift up and away from the wall, flying a few feet, landing on the floor after doing an arch, like it did a dive. I called for my mom, who was in the kitchen just around the corner. I told her that the picture of Brian just flung itself off the wall and through the air. She saw it on the other side of my bed on the floor. This was the kind of picture frame that is a real pain to get on and off of the nail. The kind that frustrates you to the point where you want to just say, "Screw it," but can't because it needs to be hanged. So that just upped the meaningful but spooky weirdness. Probably within that hour, my grandpa, my mom's dad, called. He told her that he just found out from his sister, Patty, that her husband, Bill, had been rushed to the hospital earlier that morning. Patty and Bill were Brian's parents. We think he wanted us to know that something had happened. Third story, shadow figure. Because of my physical condition, I had home care nurses for many years. When I didn't need them, or it was their break or dinner time, or we just didn't want them with us in the kitchen, I was still a teenager, and having strangers with you and your family all the time isn't ideal. Even when you like the nurse, sometimes you just need family time. They would be in the basement or downstairs living room. One afternoon, Pam, one of my nurses for a while, nice person, had been in the basement or downstairs living room. She was watching TV while having dinner or doing some paperwork. She came running up the stairs to the kitchen, breathing heavily and speaking quite quickly, with a look of pure fear on her face. My mom and I asked her what was wrong. She told us while catching her breath, "I saw somebody walk behind me in the reflection of the TV downstairs." The setup of that room would make it impossible for anybody to be behind her. She was sitting on the futon that was about 2 inches away from the wall. The TV was on the other side of the room, across from the futon, also against a wall. The basement is half in the ground with ground-level windows. The 3 of us were the only ones home, and nobody was outside, even if somebody had gone by the outside windows, which had blinds. I really doubt even just their feet would have been reflected in the TV. The TV was lower than the windows. We believed her and asked her for more details. She was still freaked out and speaking quickly, but said, "It looked like it was a guy with a coat and a hat. He walked from the left side to the right. That's when she ran up the stairs to tell us. That happened only one more time, but in the kitchen, and I saw it. I saw the reflection in the kitchen TV. A shadow figure walked behind me from my right to my left. He might have had a hat, I don't really remember for sure, but that was the only other time he was seen. 4th story. Visitor. 1 October. I was in bed, on bed rest, to stay off of an injury completely until it healed. We always decorate for Halloween, and there were a bunch of orange twinkle lights wrapped around the railings that separated the upstairs living room from what had become my bedroom, the railing going upstairs, and the railing that blocked off the basement staircase to the room I was in. It used to be the dining room before I was injured. It was in the evening, and I was on my right side watching The Simpsons with the cozy, warm glow of all of the orange lights in view. My mom was just around the corner in the kitchen, talking to her mom on the phone. She and I were the only ones home, except for our little dog, Carly. Out of nowhere, I got the feeling that I wasn't alone, and felt a presence watching me from the upstairs staircase. I didn't feel threatened or anything negative coming from it. I knew someone was there, but had no clue who it was. I called out to my mom to tell her about this. "Hey, Mom!" I only yelled so she could hear me better. The dishwasher was on, and that was back in the day when those were incredibly loud. I heard her say, "Hold on, Mom." Then she called out to me, "Yeah, honey, do you need something?" "No, but somebody's here and I don't know who they are." I think she thought I meant that I thought I heard the doorbell or something at first, because she asked me, "What do you mean?" "I mean, I feel somebody here, but I don't know who they are. Come on out here, see if you feel it too." She's had experiences throughout her life, as well as my sister and myself. So we know to go with our 6th sense. Always go with your gut. Intuition is there for a reason. And came out into the entryway. Both staircases are in front of the entryway if you're looking forward. "That's exactly where I feel something looking at me," I told her when she was by the staircases. "Are you getting anything?" "Not really. What are you getting?" It felt like someone was looking at me from over there, maybe on the 3rd stair going to the living room. But it wasn't familiar, like, I don't know who it was. I'm not really feeling it anymore. She wanted to know if I was freaked out about it or not. I told her I wasn't, so she told me to let her know if I felt it again. She told me she needed to call Granny, what we call her Mom, our grandma, back. I was cool with that. It was a good episode of The Simpsons that I wanted to get back to anyway. I think it was one of the Treehouse of Horror episodes. It was October. The next day, my mom got a phone call from her dad, George, my grandpa, or Granny. She got really quiet after I heard her say, "Hello." Then, after about 30 seconds, she came around the kitchen corner into the entryway, holding the phone in her hand down by her hip. Jaw dropped, looking at me. "Angie, you're not going to believe this," she started saying. "Virginia died yesterday." Virginia was one of George's older sisters. My mom grew up knowing Virginia and her cousins from her. Virginia was her aunt, after all. "Didn't you say yesterday that whoever was here that you felt was somebody you didn't know?" "Yeah." We both were a bit dumbfounded. I'd absolutely never met Virginia in my whole life. I got a feeling about that and said to my mom, "I think she was here to meet me and check on you before going somewhere else." My mom shook her head and said, "I think you're right." She then remembered that somebody was still on the phone with her about this news. "Oh shit." Then she put the phone back up to her ear and relayed all of this to George or Granny, whichever one it was on the phone at the time. I know she called the other right after. My grandparents were divorced, and both of them completely believed us. I always thought it was cool that Virginia stopped by. They weren't super close, but I liked that she came to visit her niece and grandniece that she'd never met. doing this before making the rounds to who knows who, and before moving on to where she was supposed to go before completely moving on.